Welcome to episode 291 of the DFO Rundown, brought to you by Botano.ca. And oh, baby, there's a big game tonight. The Capitals and the Penguins. The Penguins are suddenly clawing their way back into the playoff race. You've got Major League Baseball, NBA. You have March Madness getting down to the Final Four. So there's lots to get to. The game starts now at Botano.ca. I am Jason Gregor. As we welcome in Frank Saravalli. And Frank, I can happily and accurately say we actually witnessed a brawl, which doesn't happen very often. But that was a brawl between New York and New Jersey. 5 actual fights simultaneously. And I'm telling you, for the guys who do that, that's courageous, because if you lose, you can lose bad when there's no one to jump in right away.
I think my favorite part of it, like there were many favorite parts of it. One, that obviously it's a hell of a way to start a game. And the fans at the Garden just absolutely ate up the mayhem in Manhattan. But to me, it's actually like watching the face of Chris Tierney, who takes the opening draw, and he's like, oh God, like he's like, he wasn't one of the ringleaders, but he knew that he then had to pick someone. And it was obviously he wasn't an unwilling combatant, but he was just like, oh man, who am I going to get here? Like, you better find the right guy. Cause like,
and he got Gaudreau. He didn't get a shrinking by. Like it was funny.
No, that's what I mean. But like, K'Andre Miller was crushing his guy. And like, it was just, if you get matched up with the wrong guy, that could make for a tough night.
Well, I was surprised that Smith wasn't on the ice to start. Like, John Marino, give him credit, man. He showed no hesitation. He's not a fighter, right? Came out of college, right? And, him and Miller, he gives up a pretty big size there. Although I thought he did all right, but, Miller at the end was winning. But I was a little surprised that Smith wasn't on the ice for New Jersey to start that game, because, he's our second toughest guy.
So here's the only part about the whole night that I don't understand is the two coaches jawing at each other at the end, and then them basically like being upset that, hey, like,
you filled out the
Travis
card.
Green basically said, I'm yelling at Peter Laviolette because Peter Laviolette's yelling at me. But like, he's saying this whole thing would have been avoided had Matt Rempe just fought last time they played each other.
Yeah, I guess maybe, but I didn't mind that what Rempe did the last time either. At that point, there's nothing to do. And so, you know what? Him and McDermott, I give him credit.
So let's just put yourself in Laviolette's shoes, right? You're the home team, and someone brings you a lineup card that the Devils have filled out, and Curtis McDermott is starting. Like, my man Curtis McDermott, he has more penalty minutes this year than he does actual minutes played. I know that sounds absolutely incredibly hard to believe, but he has 45 penalty minutes and 41 total minutes played this season. He averages 3 minutes and 44 seconds per night. He's a super well-respected teammate. His teammates love him, but he's not bringing a whole lot to the table. So if you're Lavi sitting at your desk before the game and you see this guy's in the starting lineup, it can only mean one thing. So of course you're putting Rempe out there and potentially a couple bigger guys. You're not thinking that this is going to happen, but maybe in the back of your head, you have to at least protect yourself, right?
Oh, come on. He's as if he knew 100% the minute he put Rempe's name on the card what was happening. Let's call a spade here. There's no doubt.
They didn't know that all 5. They probably thought that those 2 were going to fight, but not all 5.
No, maybe not. But I did find it interesting when you look at it. So, you look at who was on the ice and who they lined up against. Like, yeah, he put Miller and Trouba on the back end. So those are some pretty physical guys. Well, Barclay Goudreau can definitely hold his own. And to even VC and but it was funny that VC's on the ice too. And him and Lazar are both kind of exact same size. To me, it was almost like he went down his lineup because this guy's matching this guy, this guy's matching this guy, this guy's matching this guy. Like, I don't know. Like the fact that there's VC straight up against Lazar and those guys, neither one of them hesitated. Like, they went they were the first guys almost. And that's why they didn't get kicked out. So, and neither one of those guys. Now, Curtis Lazar's fought a little bit in the WHL, and I think VC, I think this might be his third fight. But the fact that those two guys, we'd like to call them water bugs, Frank, right? Smaller guys, right? They're kind of in the junior lightweight division, but they were the two guys that were willing to go the quickest, right? So that's the part where I'm like, don't everybody knew what was happening.
Grab a partner, hang on for dear life. I mean, that's kind of what you're up against. The first thing I thought of so obviously this is at the Garden, right? I was thinking back to that. Do you remember a few years ago, 2021, when the Rangers sent out that statement about the Tom Wilson hit on Panarin, and they called it, quote, a horrifying act of violence?
Oh yeah, that was the worst.
And I'm laughing now because, there's plenty of people across social media that when I tweeted the fight 30 seconds after it happened and I said, let's go, people were like, what's wrong with you? You caveman, basically. Yeah, CTE is great. And it's like, come on.
That's such a lame argument. Oh,
it's been part of the fabric of the game forever. It's not new. And even a line brawl to start a game isn't new. So what are we like? If you don't like it, change the channel.
3% of concussions in their study came from fighting. 3. So if you're really concerned about CTE, then you should stand up every day and say, remove body contact. If CTE is your line in the sand, then that's what you should be calling for. Don't go to the lame, low-hanging fruit that's fighting, which contributes to 3% of it. No. If you really care, then say you want to remove body contact. Now, those people won't, Frank, because
who doesn't like this? Like, who didn't find this entertaining? Did you see the camera in the TNT studios of the guys on the desk watching it in real time since the game was on TNT? And they were cheering, clapping, cheering. Fans everywhere in the building. No one's sitting down pouting. Like, what? It's entertainment.
And it's a rivalry. Like it's, you know what? I
guess all those people hate UFC too. They think UFC is the most despicable thing on the planet.
And hey, that's fine. But there's 1,300 plus games in a season. There's lots of games that don't have a lot of emotion, and you don't need fights all the time. But let's be honest here. When was the last time there was a full-on line brawl? And the thing that I'm happy about is you can actually call it a brawl. Please, for baseball people, stop saying it was a bench clearing brawl in baseball when they all run out onto the field and do nothing.
They hug each other.
That's not a brawl, right? It's not a brawl. It's not a melee. It's a walking out. You know what it is? It's a waste of time. That's what it is. It's a waste of time. But everybody's like, ooh, let's look like we're tough. But nah, because trust me, it takes a lot of courage to want to fight someone, especially, in front of 17,000 people and all the people watching on TV, right? Especially when you got a bunch of mouth breathers who are on their phone like, oh, look at that guy. Like Tanner Jeannot and Reeves, by the way. That was a heavyweight tilt. And, Reeves landed a pretty good punch at the end. And people are like, oh, look at Jeannot got killed. And I'm like, no, he didn't. Those two guys, that was a heavyweight tilt, Frank. Like, we saw some pretty big slobber knockers. And I think
to do it on two blades.
Oh,
that's the total different part. You could be a good street fighter, but it's balance, it's coordination, it's leverage, it's all these things at once. And sometimes you're doing it with huge size disadvantages, as K. Andre Miller reminded us.
No, I have no issue with it happening, because I think it takes a lot of courage. And I also I follow the study, I read all the science on it. The whole CT, if you don't like fighting, that's okay. Just say I don't like fighting. I can respect that. You don't like fighting. I don't like street fighting. I don't watch street fighting. Yeah. Honestly, I hate it. At the bar, I was not the guy who would stand and watch guys fight, whatever. I didn't like in hockey. I just think it's different. It's controlled. There's an official. When you're down, you're down. There's nobody kicking you in the head, anything like that.
And that kind of ended it too.
It's just, oh, totally.
And you know what? Full marks to the Devils, I think, because it would have been easy to just go into that game and it's just Rempe against McDermott and that, one fight, whatever. To me, that actually said a lot about the pride that team has in general after the way that they were beat up by the Rangers and Rempe previously, to want to head into that game wanting to make a statement about themselves.
Oh yeah, there's lots of guys there that aren't regular fighters. And that's what I said. Like John Marino's not a fighter. Kevin Ball's not a huge fighter.
But how many teams do we see that have a game where they get pushed around and they just meekly, the next time they play, you never hear boo about it?
Yeah.
Full marks to that told me a lot about the Devils and where they're heading next year. That's a team that cares.
Yeah, no, that was great. And it was entertaining. Obviously, I know they lost the game, but they're not making the playoffs either way. Although the Eastern Conference right now, I have no idea who's going to make the playoffs. It's not somehow the Pittsburgh Penguins are back, legitimately back in the race. They play Washington tonight. You could argue that this season now, this might be the biggest game of the year to date. Obviously, there'll be bigger ones as we get in the final week of the season. Then playoffs obviously will trump everything. But when you look at a regular season tilt tonight, this is probably the biggest game of the season.
I mean, if the Penguins lose in regulation, that probably takes them out of it, right?
Oh, for sure. I think yes. Right. Because
they're hanging by a thread.
Yeah. They're at 5 back with 6 to go. Like they win in regulation though, Frank, tonight. And then they're 1 point back of the Capitals. Potentially one in Detroit. The Islanders could actually jump over the Capitals if they beat Columbus tonight. Like it's crazy still in the East. Absolutely crazy. We didn't talk about it for a few weeks, but here we are. And suddenly the Islanders and the Penguins, at least for a night, depending on what happens, have still a legit chance to make the playoffs if they can both win tonight.
So here's what the math says. My guy, Micah Blake McCurdy at Ineffective Math. The Penguins right now are at 19% chance to make the playoffs. Just like 10 days ago, they were at 5, by the way. So they've more than quadrupled basically their playoff chances. If the Penguins win in regulation against the Caps on Thursday night, they go from 19% to 29%. If they lose in regulation, they go from 19% to 7%. Even if they get 1 point, they go from 19 to 14. Getting 1 point doesn't help them. It's basically regulation or else. And I wonder if they head into that from a coaching perspective, thinking regulation or else. You can't give up a point to a team you're chasing.
So they're going to pull a Minnesota if they pull the goalie in overtime, is what you're saying.
Well, no, because the other team would have earned a point. They can't get to overtime. Yeah. You can't let the Caps get a point. You can't give up a point to the team you're chasing.
Yeah.
So it's not the Minnesota.
Well, I wonder if the game's tied with a minute to go, are they pulling the goalie?
I mean, just look at the math. Look at how big of a difference it is. I would.
Yeah.
I mean, even winning in overtime or a shootout, it's a nice bonus. But once you get to the OT part, there's no guarantee you win. It's +7, so they'd go from 19 to 26 if the Penguins win an OT or a shootout.
Wow. Yeah. So then because they jump up, I don't see them pulling their goal in regulation.
Yeah, but again, if they lose in OT or a shootout, they go from 19 to 14. That's a big difference. That's a 13 percentage point swing.
So that's why I think it's more likely that they pull their goalie in overtime. That's where I think it's most likely.
Maybe.
Yeah, unless they really love themselves in the shootout. So, but it'll be fascinating, man. We thought it was a 3-team race, but suddenly the Islanders and the Penguins have clawed they've clawed themselves back in. The other teams can't help themselves. Like Detroit's basically trying to lose their way to making the playoffs. It's nuts.
Doesn't it feel like someone's going to finish on like a 4-4-2 run to get in? Like just as weak as possible. But guess what? All those teams have opened the door for the Penguins and Islanders to come back in.
Totally.
It's all on them. And how amazing of a story would it be, though? Sidney Crosby, this 36-year-old season, that's incredible. And they trade away Jake Gensel and still make it. That would be crazy. I still don't think that changes their Stanley Cup hopes. Like, I don't think they hold a candle to anyone else in the East, but to even have a sniff in the playoffs, that would really be something.
Yeah, as you mentioned earlier, Frank, it's kind of a pillow fight.
No, I said it's a disgrace to pillow fights.
Well, whatever it is, it's at least they're giving their fan base some hope, and away we go. So I know some will argue this is why you should have the expanded playoffs for 9th and 10th teams, and so they would play one extra game. And
so you don't like that?
No, I don't. I think it's manufactured storylines. All you're doing is you're expanding your playoffs to include more average teams. Why?
Well, my answer to that would be like the number of playoff teams is arbitrary as it is. It was 16 made it in a 21 team league. Now we're at 16 in a 32 team league. How has the number of teams increased by 50%, yet the number of playoff teams has remained static?
Well, because I think they went with a format that made the most sense. If you had 12 teams, there's buys and different things like that. So they didn't want to do it originally. And so, like the other leagues have just tried to catch up. That's all. Baseball used to only have 4. Right now, they've expanded quite a bit. The NFL used to have 12. They're the 14, and probably within a year or two, they'll be at 16. And then everyone's like, okay, they're at 16. It's half their league. No one complains. You had hockey fans like, well, because we were higher, we have to maintain higher.
I actually like the idea of a play-in tournament. And the reason for that is I think the top 7 teams or so should get a little rest. 4 days, 5 days, nothing crazy. But I think it will actually make the ultimate product better.
Maybe that's the only benefit. It's the only benefit is your top 12 teams get a rest.
No, the other benefit is added revenue. That benefits everyone. Who's complaining about an extra $2 million a game?
Hey, let me be clear, Frank. It does not benefit the fans whatsoever.
Yes, it does. Yeah, wait a second. If you are a fan of the 10th place team in the East and you get a play-in game to see if your team could go on a magical run, of course it benefits fans. Why wouldn't it benefit those fans?
It doesn't benefit. I'll say that it does not benefit the fans who get absolutely pillaged by doubling the ticket price for one playoff game. And that's what they do now. You go look at the price.
I've seen the prices and the Oilers prices. I saw their sheet. I've seen the Flyers sheet. I've seen a lot of them. The playoff prices are out of control. But you made the choice as a fan, and you have a choice as to whether or not you want to purchase those tickets. No one's putting a gun to your head.
I should not. I think that's inaccurate. Season ticket holders have never in this. Trust me, I'm a season ticket holder. There has never been an increase like this ever. So when I bought my season tickets last year, I didn't know that was it. And there's people that canceled, and that's fine. And there's lots that did. But they make it so you invest all year long. And then in order to get your playoff tickets, you got to pay for the season tickets again next year. It's a joke. And so lots of people said no. But make no mistake, the fans did not know that there was going to be that much of an increase because there's never been one before.
So just for everyone listening, like, what do you pay for your season tickets per game?
Per game in the regular season?
Yeah.
Like for 2 seats, I don't know, maybe $2.80.
So $1.40 per seat per game?
Yeah, maybe $1.50. I'd have to look at it.
And then what are they asking for the playoffs?
$3.40 a seat.
The first round is what?
$3.40 a seat.
So you go from $1.40 or $1.50 to $3.40, and that's just round 1.
That's round 1. By the Stanley Cup final, it's up to $920 a seat.
And Tyler said for the first round for his dad's seats, they go from $406 for the pair to $760.
Yeah. Yeah. His seats are basically his seats are right in the same section as mine. Right.
That's a big jump.
Yeah.
So and I'm not knocking that at, because that's serious money for everyone. When you do that though, and let's say you say no, a lot of times the team is thrilled because they can then go to the public market and put them on sale for even more than that. I don't know if that is a thing in Canada or not, but that's a thing here. Is the team will sell directly on the secondary market, whatever seats they don't sell to season ticket holders, and they charge like the going rate of whatever the secondary market
Oh
is.
yeah, yeah.
They're thrilled if you walk from your seats.
Well, not thrilled if you walk from your season tickets, because there's an endless line for playoff seats. I get it. There's not an endless line for season ticket holders, and that's the game of chicken that they play. And there's lots of games in the NHL in the regular season aren't sold out anymore.
It's
across the league in
cyclical.
hockey markets.
It comes and it goes. The team's good, the team's bad. Like, there's a cyclical nature to ticket sales and season ticket sales. But to get back and put it back on the rails of what our original conversation was, I said it gives fans one additional, you say reason to spend, I would say reason to believe.
Sure, and that's fair. But like I said, to me, it's fake, because those teams, like, it's the 10th place team. You know, they win one extra game and then they lose. It's the team's not that good. Right. And I know people, yeah, but what about Florida?
Yeah, that's a bullshit argument. I agree with you,
because Florida was a 120-point team the year before.
Yeah.
They struggled out early. Then they got quite good actually down the stretch, if you look at their record.
Even though they lost their way in.
Yeah. It
still wasn't for the Penguins gagging on it against the Blackhawks. They wouldn't have made it. But
none of those teams this year, the Islanders, the Penguins, the Capitals, none of them are Florida of last year. Let's just make that abundant clear.
But one big gripe that I do have about the playoffs as a whole, I love the playoffs so much. But the fact that it's the opposite of the NBA, like, the first round in the NHL is the best round by far. Why is it that the Stanley Cup playoffs get worse as they go along? It's war of attrition. It's injury. You can't possibly play at that same level for 2 consecutive months. That's my theory on it anyway. Poke holes in it if you want. But the Cup final, like, look at last year's final. Florida had a couple guys that played through injuries that required surgery that kept them out until December. Matthew Tkachuk needed help getting out of bed in the morning to play his games. That's not a series. That's crazy. And I think about the NBA, whose first round blows. And then each successive round, it gets better. And then the finals it's appointment viewing. Everyone watches the finals, even if you aren't a hardcore basketball fan. Why doesn't that same thing exist in hockey? And that's the reason why I'd push for a play-in. I want these teams to get as much rest as possible.
Yeah, well, I know if I look back to last year, Frank, Denver swept the Lakers in the conference final and then pounded Miami in the NBA finals.
Okay, that's an aberration. For the most part, it is really good.
Well, the difference is because in the NBA, usually you have, there's not as many Cinderella teams because
they don't get upset.
Your best players are on the floor the majority of the time in the NBA, and your best players decide the outcomes of games. In the NHL, in the NHL, there's so much uncontrolled possibilities. A puck, you shoot it from the point, deflects off 6 sticks and goes in, and you win the game. That doesn't happen in the NBA. Like, there's very few fluke shots where a guy, you know what? Oh, I'm turning my back to the basket now, Frank, and I'm just going to lob up a Hail Mary, Frank Saravalli in the tough streets of Philadelphia when he was playing street ball, right? Like, those type of shots aren't the norm. But in hockey,
I was the whitest basketball
I know,
player you've ever
but
seen.
in hockey, guys can score from behind the net, off a deflection, own goals and stuff. So there's so much unpredictability that you'll have teams that don't necessarily have the best players. Whereas in the NBA, usually 90% of the time, it's a superstar team versus a superstar team, and it's the big name guys, and that's why everybody watches.
Okay, but still, there's something to be said about it can't just be about the star players, because the star players basically play every minute of every game for the most part, 42 of 48 minutes or whatever it is, 45 of 48. Why aren't they just worn down and beat to shit by round 4? They're not.
Well, it's because it's not as physical of a game, number one. right? Like it's only 48 minutes instead of 60 right there, right? So there's a shorter period of time that you actually play. Then now the star players do play more than the star players in the NHL, but there's not the body contact. The injuries in
I
hockey
know
come from
all
the
that, but
relentless hitting.
I just think the league. My point is, it doesn't even necessarily have to do with playing, and I don't think you can fix the schedule because it already goes too late as it is. The last possible day for the Stanley Cup Final this year is June 24th. It's way too late. It should be over by June 1st. The only way to do that is to start your season way earlier or condense it. They're not going to do that because they want the revenue. They want more games, not less.
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is, but
not more playoff games.
It is fact. Well, it is fact that hockey gets worse as the playoffs go on.
But that's why adding more games to me, as I said, the only small benefit is that your top teams will get an extra 3 days rest between the end of the regular season. So that might help you for a bit. But then once you get through to the second round, that rest doesn't matter now because now guys are banged up and they're not getting the extra rest.
Yeah, I'm conceding to you. I agree. I'm just saying at some point they have to figure it out. I think you need some small changes, something to try and get these teams a little bit more rest.
Yeah, the only way you could do it is if you put in a mandated rest period between each round.
Yeah.
And I don't think they want to do that because they feel like they lose momentum, but
it's momentum, it's interest, it's a million things.
Yeah. So
rhythm teams wouldn't even want to do it.
No. So I don't see it. But like the difference, Frank, is the reason the first round in the NHL is because of the unpredictability. You have teams like, I'll use the Dallas Stars, for instance. The Dallas Stars right now that Jake Ottinger's found his game, the Dallas Stars would be my favorite heading into the playoffs. Like they are an absolute dominant force. Now the Oilers, upchucked numerous times last night in that game, but they deserve to lose that game. There's no question. And Dallas was the much more controlled team. They were the much more poised team. And now Jake Ottinger, even though Dallas gave up a lot, Jake Ottinger is just like, no, thanks. And he's got like I think like a 950 save percentage now in his last 6 games and a 1.2
955, 2 shutouts, and he's riding a shutout streak of 52 consecutive shots at least.
Yeah. And he was hot garbage, Frank, for a long stretch of this series. He just was. But now he's playing well. And you go into the playoffs. And I know a few years ago when Colorado was dominant and Daryl Sutter had the waste of 8 days, and it was accurate, right? But right now, you know what? Whoever it is, the Nashville or LA or whoever's the wild card team, I'm telling you, the way Dallas is playing, that series is going to be over very quickly. Whoever they play, they're going to spank them.
I'm on board with that. Look, I've said it all year long, consistently on this pod. I picked Dallas before the year started. I feel pretty good about it right now. I wavered a bit, maybe 3-4 weeks ago, wondering about Colorado 3 weeks ago. But let's real quick, let's go 1 to 5. Give me your top 5 cup contenders in order.
Dallas would be 1. I would put the Rangers 2, Carolina 3, Colorado 4, which is hard because those teams are all playing each other. And then
it's impossible to do a top 5 that doesn't guarantee that someone will be out before the second round.
Yeah, no, exactly. And then who's my 5th team right now? Do a tie. I'd still say Florida and Edmonton. Both of them aren't playing very well right now, but I've looked down the stretch. I've seen teams go 16-1 down the stretch, Frank, lose in the first round. We saw the Boston Bruins. So I don't get too caught up in if a team's playing great or not for 5 or 6 games. Mm-hmm. But so both of those teams right now aren't playing as well as they can, but they're both capable of playing well.
I've got Dallas 1, Florida 2. I still think their game translates really well. Colorado 3, Rangers 4, Carolina 5.
Yeah.
Pretty similar, just different order.
Yeah.
I don't have any Canadian teams. I don't have the Vegas Golden Knights. Neither one of us do, which the way they're playing, we might come to regret that. I don't know. It's going to be fascinating.
Oh, the first round this year in the playoffs, or outside of the Dallas matchup, like, although let's see who gets it in the East. I think you might have, Carolina might have an easier first round opponent, and the Rangers, it looks like they'll finish first. So the Rangers and Carolina both could get the two easiest oppositions of the first round, no question.
Yeah, but then they're set up to smash each other.
No, I know
they're
set up
like
to smash
congratulations.
Each other, yeah. But that's what's going to happen. Like, good teams have to play each other at some point. People get all up in arms about meeting too early. I'm like, hey, you want to win? You got to be good teams. It's just how it is.
So now the Preds have lost 3 in a row. We kind of, okay, the Preds are back to just being a.
Well, no, I think the Preds can still be a dangerous team if UC Saros shows you he gets hot, and Roman Josi is, he can really control a game. So you have to respect the Preds, but I still look at their high-end offensive guys, and when I put them up against Dallas or Colorado or Vancouver or Edmonton, they don't have the high-end offensive juggernauts of those teams. So that's why I don't see them as a real threat.
Are the Oilers in trouble?
They're in a little bit of a funk. Well, I'll say this.
I don't mean the funk. I just mean like the first round is now an absolute coin flip.
Yeah, they just got to get some right now. Some of their better players aren't playing very well. Darnell Nurse got to wake up. And I wrote about it 2 weeks ago. He's got to play better. Like his game last night in Dallas, my goodness, like the pinch he made on that, I think it was the fourth goal. The third goal was abysmal. Like, there's zero reason to make that play. Like zero. It's a terrible thing. Evander Kane hasn't scored in 20 some games. Nugent Hopkins doesn't have a goal at 5-on-5 in almost 2 months. And, Leon Draisaitl, as good as he can be, he still has the willingness to want to just try a high risk play at the wrong time that results in, like, Edmonton controlled the first period. They're down 1-0 because of one bad play. And so if your best players don't commit to controlling the puck, and that's the one concern about the Oilers, Frank, that bubbles under the surface is their ability. And I've said it for years. No one was better at self-destructing than the Oilers. And they did it again last night. They made some really bonehead plays that led to goals against. And if you do that again in the playoffs, guess what? You're out. So, maybe it's a good lesson they learned. But, at some point, the coaching staff, one of the other leaders, last night would have been the best time to sit a guy down for a shift or two. I would have done it because at some point, other coaches would do it to their top guys. At some point, when
you're getting romped, why not?
Yes,
you got to send a message.
Point, because it's this. Your best players are the ones that win you the series and lose you the series. I know people get, you need depth. Yeah, you need depth. But at the end of the day, your best guys, like the biggest myth still is people repeating. And I know that Bruce Cassidy himself said it. Our depth guys were better. Bullshit. Jack Eichel destroyed the Oilers. He was 8-1, 5-on-5. Marchessault and Barbashev, that line, they outscored the Oilers 7-2. Don't give me this BS garbage. Yeah, your third and fourth line scored a goal or two. Your top line's dominated. And that's normally 99% of the time what happens.
You're right. Probably should have sent a message. Yeah, this is not acceptable.
So they, I think they can get back on track easily because they got the skill. They've done it a long time, but they always will revert back to that's their weakness. It's like, Darnell Nurse, I try to do too much. Some point.
Well, you said it for years that the Oilers' biggest enemy is themselves. They beat themselves.
Totally.
So, but here's why I'm asking if they're in trouble. Like their first round matchup was different 10 days ago. It's now Vegas, who's now playing really well. And they didn't even get Hurdle back yet. Like, are the Oilers in trouble? Like, could the Oilers not make it out of round one?
Well, yeah, you're playing Vegas. It's no guarantee for sure, right? And I hate to use Boston, but we can go through it every year. There's lots of good teams that lose in the first round. It's happened historically. I would think that Edmonton, the scars that have built up from the last few years should help them. And I don't get too wrapped up in one game against Dallas. They played like junk. To me, I'll see how they respond against Colorado on Friday. It's probably a good thing that they get another really good team right away. And we'll see. But the thing is, Frank, the regular season is so different than the playoffs. And the more I watch it, the more I realize it and study it. You go from playing 5 different teams in 1 week to now playing the same team for 2 weeks straight. And it's about matchups. And a lot of times it comes down to, like, the Oilers scored first in every game. And if you look at historically, the odds of scoring first give you a significantly higher chance to win. That's a fact across huge numbers. They scored first in every game in that series and still lost. Why? because they could sell. They didn't score first or in game 6. And they still led after the first period in game 6. So they had a lead in every one of those games and lost because they were unwilling to play smart when they had a lead. And I don't know how you can predict that, because in the regular season this year, they've gone long stretches of playing incredibly well doing it. So once the playoff comes, it's a different mindset. And is Leon Draisaitl going to stop and not make a dangerous pass out of his own zone? I can't say it. He'll have to show me. Is Darnell Nurse not going to think he's Superman and can get to every pinch? Or is he going to sit back and let the play come to him consistently? I don't know the answer. All I know is that the Oilers in the past, and I know the past is the past, you've got to make your future by changing your mindset. And we'll find out in the playoffs if they're willing to do it.
One more question for you before we get to Tyler. Are the Canucks contenders or pretenders?
Oh, I still think they're contenders, right? I know that, like, first of all, they don't have Demko right now. So that's the question mark. What happens?
Yeah, but Rick Tocchet has been sounding the alarm about their play for a couple weeks.
And I understand. And they're not playing the best, but they also, Frank, like, they had nothing to play for the longest time, right? And so, yes, they don't have a ton of playoff experience. They also don't have a ton of experience being a good team, right? So you hit a little bit of a funk right now. It's not like they're awful in a funk. They're just in a funk. I wouldn't count them out. Like, to beat the Los Angeles Kings, they're going to have to play and be patient, right? You can't have Zadorov losing his marbles because LA doesn't want to play hockey and they don't play hockey and they don't let us play hockey. Dude, that's their style. It's frustrating, but guess what? That's probably who you're going to have to face. So suck it up, right? Or Nashville, right? Either team. Like, there's no easy outs in the playoffs. So, and if Vancouver wins a series, well, now all of a sudden you exhale and they're like, okay, not saying they could, but I wouldn't be shocked if they came out of the Pacific. Like, I don't think they're a bad team by any stretch. Like, they've got game breakers, which I think you need in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. They got one of the best defensemen in the NHL in Quinn Hughes. And if they get Thatcher Demko back, Thatcher Demko is an elite goalie. When he's healthy, he is an elite goalie. And if you have an elite goalie, usually you have a chance.
He's eligible to come off of LTIR on Saturday. So I don't think he's very far away. He's been skating. I'd say he gets in 2 to 3 games before the playoffs start, at least. And I don't know. They're definitely not pretenders, but I think they're somewhere in between the two.
Yeah, like right now, I wouldn't rank them.
They're not in our top 5.
But I have those rankings. I could easily see a team out of the top 5 win the Stanley Cup this year. Easily. Like, I'm not, I wouldn't be shocked if Vegas or Edmonton or Vancouver or any of those teams win it. Right? Like, the one team that looked really good a month ago, the team I'm probably most concerned right now is Winnipeg Jets. Right?
Yeah, I agree.
Like, they've fallen down, and now they're going to have to go through Colorado and Dallas.
I don't like that setup.
No,
for them. And their offense is back to not scoring. Their top line's a mess. Their power play can't score again. They looked good for a stretch after the Monahan edition. He goes in the bumper spot, and they were great for 3 weeks. Their penalty kill has been no good. I don't know.
Yeah, they're just like, the Jets are a good team, but they're just, it's funny. I'm sure Jets fans look and say, oh my God, in the 80s, we had to face the Flames and the Oilers, and we were a really good team and we couldn't beat them. Now they're a really good team, but they got to face Dallas and Colorado. It's just 2 different teams that are just slightly better, and they're a really good team. In other divisions, I'd look at the Jets and say, man, they'd be a super tough out. But against Dallas and Colorado, they're just clearly the 3rd best team.
Yeah, I think if you plopped the Jets in another division, they'd have a real good shot.
Oh, yeah. Like, trust me, Carolina would do cartwheels playing Philly or whoever they're going to play, Washington or the Islanders, maybe Pittsburgh, rather than the Jets, right? You could now Vegas, maybe not 3rd place team in the Pacific, but the Jets are good. They're not great. And their offense, Frank, like, that's been their weakness all year long. Their goaltending's great, Connor Hellebuck, but come playoff time, it's really hard to win just with goaltending. Like, Vegas had Aiden Hill play great, but then they also scored a boatload of goals. And that's what the Jets right now, like, can Winnipeg score in the playoffs? I wouldn't bet on it.
Yeah, me neither.
I hope I'm wrong, because I love like, Winnipeg's one of those teams that I always kind of root for. I'd love to see them go deep, but I just don't see it happen.
I wouldn't. You said bet. I wouldn't bet on the Jets to beat either of those teams, either Colorado or Dallas.
No,
I'm not saying they're going to be enormous underdogs. I'm just saying to get through one, maybe. To get through both, I think is unlikely.
Yes, yeah, they would need to get through one and then hope there's an upset from the wild card. We'll see. Let's bring in Tyler Yaremchuk. Ty, how you doing?
What's going on, gentlemen? I'm back with another edition of Fill in the Blank, delivered by DoorDash, 25% off and 0 delivery fees on your first order of $15 or more. All you need to do is download the DoorDash app and enter the promo code NATION25. All right, let's get into things here. We saw the Dallas Stars last night. You guys touched on it a little bit. Laid a beating on the Edmonton Oilers. They are now up to 7 players with 20-plus goals on the season. Wyatt Johnson, Rupe Hintz, Jason Robertson, then Pavelski, Duchesne, Sagan, and Marchment. Jamie Benz at 19 as well. But the most surprising player to hit the 20-goal mark for the Dallas Stars is blank, Frank.
Matt Duchesne. I think he arrived at a real inflection point in his career after that buyout. And I had him on, frankly speaking, a few weeks ago, and it was an unbelievable conversation. Honestly, it's one of the most favorite podcasts that I've done in the last 3 years because he was so open and honest about how he felt on the day that he got bought out. And then 24 hours later to make the commitment, less than that, to Dallas. That's a big jump to make right away. And sometimes I feel like when that happens, guys, there's just so much going on that you don't always pick the right spot, one, because you just want to land somewhere. And two, with everything that happened, it's probably opens up the door for you to question yourself. Hey, they don't want me anymore. Can I still do this? And the fact that he's already passed last season's goal total, the fact that he's 6 points north of where he was last season, he's not going to be the 43 goal, 86 point guy that he was 2 years ago. That was a career outlier season for his entire, tenure in the NHL, 1,050 games. But the fact that he got north of that this season and for what he's being paid by Dallas, it's been an unbelievable pickup.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's one that's a real surprise to me. I'll just say this. I'm a little surprised that Wyatt Johnson is the one leading them in goals with 30. What a hell of a pick. Joe McDonnell probably doesn't get talked about enough as the head amateur scout or the director of amateur scouting for Dallas. But what he's done since 2017 is unmatched in the NHL. It is Heiskanen, Ottinger, Robertson in 1 year. Then they got Thomas Harley at 18, who's looking like an absolute beast. Then you throw in the two kids on the same line that they got in the same trade. They had the 15th pick. They moved down to 23rd and 47. And they take Wyatt Johnson and Logan Stankoven. They got Maverick Bork leading the AHL in scoring with 71 points. So I'm just going to get a shout out to Joe McDonnell because right now there's no one who has hit on more picks outside of the top 5 than him and the Stars.
Yeah, it's been unreal. The Pittsburgh Penguins, you guys touched on them a little bit earlier on in the podcast. Just looking, their schedule is a gauntlet. They go Washington, then Tampa, Toronto, Detroit, Boston, Nashville, and the Islanders. Basically, they don't play a bottom feeder or a team that's even eliminated from the playoffs yet in any of those games. Just looking, moneypuck.com has them at 14.7% in terms of their chance to make the playoffs. Patano has them at plus 600, which translates to about 14.29%. I want to ask you guys, though, the Pittsburgh Penguins have a blank % chance of getting in, Jason.
No, man. Well, I counted them out, so I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I'll say like 4.
Oh, you're going to go lower than what the odds are saying. That schedule's tough.
Yeah, their schedule's tough. Well, the other guys have some much easier schedules. Now, easier schedule, you still got to win the games. And we saw, hey, Colorado lost to Columbus, so there's no guarantee. But
look, the Blackhawks went in and ended 2 seasons last year, Calgary and Pittsburgh. So don't give me the easy schedule routine as that's the method to get into the playoffs. I'm going to say higher. I'm going to say 20.
Ooh.
I think, look, just to be super honest, like the Wings, Flyers, and Caps don't really impress me. Not that the Penguins have. So to say that are any of these teams I know what the math is, and I know the ground that they need to cover, but to say that any of those teams are head and shoulders above Pittsburgh, to me, they're all kind of equal. Can Pittsburgh, which one's going to get their act together? And Pittsburgh's the only one, at least right now, that I've seen some evidence that they even want this. Maybe that's a little unfair to Washington because they played pretty well, but like no one else is playing well. The Flyers have lost 5 straight. What's up with the Wings? Like what? I mean, why can't it be Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I think that's fair at this point. Like everyone else has just been so average, so mid for so long that it still looks wide open. Last one I am going to float over to you guys. We know the playoff race. I mean, it's getting interesting a little bit in the Eastern Conference right now. I want to ask you guys a question I floated your way a couple of weeks ago to see if your answers have changed. The most intriguing seeding race, or maybe I should frame it, the most important seeding race going on still in the NHL is blank. If you want me to rattle off a couple, I mean, Toronto still has an outside shot of catching the Florida Panthers for second. Carolina maybe has an outside shot of catching the Rangers if they win their game in hand. Colorado maybe an outside shot of catching Dallas. Edmonton maybe an outside shot of catching Vancouver. But Frank, is there one seeding race that stands out to you?
It's not. We're not just talking East, right?
East or West, either one's good.
For me, I would say honestly, I'm wondering at this point if the Golden Knights can catch the Oilers. Could they possibly flip-flop it and get home ice? Seems like a bit of a long shot with, the game in hand that the Oilers have. To me, I think right now, the most interesting seeding race, there's a lot of separation in most of them. I would say Preds or Kings, which one's going to be 7 and which one's going to be 8? That's my answer.
Yeah, that's fair. 1 point separating them right now. It'd be the difference between, Vancouver, Dallas in all likelihood, which is crazy. Greg's, what's your answer?
Yeah, no, it's the Kings Preds. That to me is the closest seeding race really left, outside of obviously the second wild card and the third place in the Metro. Like, obviously those are super close. So I guess I'll go with that one. I'm not sure we'll see any of the other top 6 teams switch spots.
Yeah, a lot of them feel like they're kind of becoming a little anticlimactic. All right, that is a wrap on this week's edition of Fill in the Blank, delivered by Dor.
And before we go, man, we got to mention Nikita Kucherov setting the NHL record last night. Most assists in a season by a winger. It's never happened before. This guy is having himself just an absolute killer season for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Just continues to put up points. He's obviously leading the scoring race with 130 points, 3 up on McKinnon, 4 up on McDavid. Then you just throw in how many he's up on his own teammates. Like, it's a hell of a year for him, man. He's, 43 points up on 47 points up on Braden Point, his own teammate, for God's sake. So, but yeah, Nikita Kucherov, man, I don't think we probably haven't talked about him enough, but done something that no other winger. He just passed Jaromir Jagr's record for most apples in a season, and is obviously going to surpass 90 assists this year, which is quite remarkable for him and what he's doing for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And they are a team that's starting to heat up at the right time. A team with a lot of playoff experience. That's the benefit of winning your division, whether it's going to be Boston or New York. Whoever doesn't win the East, you're going to get Tampa Bay in the first round. That's not going to be an easy one with Vasilevsky and Hedman and Kucherov and Point and all their playoff experience. That's the one team, Frank, that's a low seed that I would not want to face.
Not for nothing, Vasilevsky's been really freaking good again.
Yes. He's
been Ottinger-like numbers, 8-1-1 in his last 10 with a 930.
Oh, yeah.
They're the old switch flippers. That's what they are. Just, hey, oh wait, it's April. Yeah, we're good. We're back.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm sorry. I don't want to face them in the first round. I don't want to face them at all.
Well, Boston right now, it looks like
who had that quote? Which coach was it? He said, I think there's a lot of teams that don't want to play anyone in the first round.
Yeah, I think it was Keefe who said that when it was asked.
But that's the truth.
Oh,
there's a lot of teams that don't want to face anyone in the first round.
no.
Unfortunately, that's not how it works.
No. It's going to be an absolute battle, right? Battle. So, which makes it fun. Should be very interesting. Just like, hey, getting down to the stretch, Frank. What's the updated standings in the Wendy's playoff pick or playoff? Not playoff. In the Wendy's survivor pool. What's the updated standings? We had some races in the playoffs. Has anybody pulled away yet as we enter the final few weeks?
No, the season long is neck and neck. And if I was thinking about this yesterday, if you want some indication of how difficult this pool has been, I don't know what week of the season this is, but if you run the table and win a week, you get 4 points. So since October, since the season started, the entire leader for the whole season only has 30 points.
No, well, there's about in the full season, I think there's 26 to 28 weeks, give or take.
Okay, so we're at week 26 then, if there's 28, and there's 4 points available per week, and that's 104 total points available. Right now, the leader for the entire season for $5,000 cash only has 30 points. I'm telling you, that's how legitimately hard this pool has been all season long. The leader for $5,000 has a less than 30% success rate.
Yeah. So, and hey, you know what? If you want some success, of course, the only thing sweeter than winning is starting your day with the new Cinnabon pull apart from Wendy's. So damn good. So even if you can't finish first, you want to finish strong, you get your their weekly prizes, including the Cinnabon pull apart from Wendy's. Sign up today at Daily Faceoff, sponsored by Wendy's and the Wendy's app. Frank, have a great weekend. We will see if there's any clarity come Monday in the tight race in the Eastern Conference. Capitals fans, Pens fans, Red Wings, Flyers, Islanders. The dream's still alive as of Thursday morning. And tonight, a huge game for the Pens and the Capitals. Penguins, I think, have to win to keep their slim hopes alive. And if they do, race is on, baby. Should be fun.